Welcome back to another video. Today I'll be showing you guys how to cut and sew a cufflink sleeve. This is a requested video and I think most of the problem most of you have is the pleat area and the calculation. So I'll be showing you guys the formula on how to do this step by step. So all you have to do is just to make sure you pay attention and you watch this video from beginning to the end. If you like the video, give it a thumb up and make sure you subscribe. I'm going to give you guys all the formula and the calculation needed to actually achieve this. Let's get straight into the video. So right here, this is the fabric. This is before cutting of the sleeve itself. So this is the sleeve. So first thing I'm going to do right here, as you can see, is on the fabric, I already cut the bodice, as you can see in my hand. So this is the bodice. So in order to get the measurement for the sleeve itself, so I'll be measuring the armhole circumference. You can see that in my hand. So make sure the armhole circumference is accurate. You can see that. So what you're going to do now is, I'm going to measure the armhole round. You know, one side has to be a little bit deeper than the other, so don't forget that. There's a curve at that edge. So measure the armhole round. So here we have a total of 12¼ or so. It's not up to 12.5. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to subtract 1.5 from that. So you know we have 12.5, it's not up to 12.5. So I'm going to subtract 1.5 from that, which is going to give us a total of 10.5, right? So now you can slant your sleeve if you want to cut it. The slanting help you to make sure the sleeve is balanced on the sleeve. But either way, you can cut it straight. But mostly I usually cut it slant lately because I figure out it makes sure your fabric is relaxed on your bodice, so that there won't be wrinkling on your armhole side. It helps. So I'm just going to slant it a little bit like this, as you guys can see in my hand. You can see that. So now at this place, at the armhole depth, I'm going to deepen it by 4 inches. At that side, I'm going to deepen it by 4 inches. So here I folded this place by 10.5 inches. I subtract 1.5 from the entire armhole cuffing which we have. So I'll fold this place by 10.5 inches. So based on our armhole circumference, right? Our armhole circumference is 12.5. So I subtract 1.5 from it, which will give me 10.5, right? So sometimes, depending, you can minus more than that, but usually to get my armhole circumference, I usually minus 1.5 from my initial armhole circumference. So from the 4 inches, I'm going to make a slant to the 4 inches armhole depth in which we make, as you can see. Let me zoom in closer so that you guys can see it clearly. You can see that. So I'm just going to chalk. I'm just going to make my curve all the way to that down part. You can see that. After marking my armhole curve, so if you measure it round, you're going to have your 12.5. You're going to have your 12.5 after curving it. So that is what you need to get accurately. So I'm going to simply cut that side out. So that's my armhole curve. So now you can simply trim out your 1/4 inch or the edge of the sleeve itself. So you can trim out your 1/4 inch. So let's continue with this. So the next thing we're going to do now is on the length of the sleeve. Will be the length of the sleeve. So let me take out the measurements and show you guys the measurement of the sleeve itself. So in order to take the length on my measurement, my length is 23 inches. That's the sleeve length. So for my cufflinks extra, I'm going to take out 3 inches. That's 23 minus 3 inches, which will give us 20, right? So to that 20, I'm going to add 1/2 inch to that for my sewing allowance on the shoulder, which will be like 1/4 inch, and 1/4 inch for the sewing allowance on the wrist itself. So I'll be adding 1/2 inch to my 20 inches, making 25. So here, making 20.5, sorry. So here, I'm just going to measure my 20.5. You can see that. And I'm going to mark it at the side. I believe you guys are seeing what I'm doing here. So now the wrist circumference on my measurement, our wrist circumference is 10 inches, right? So my wrist circumference, I'm going to mark the 5, that's 10 divided by 2. I'm going to mark 5 inches right there. You can see that. So to that 5 inches, I'm going to add an extra 1.5 inches to that. The 1.5 inches is 1 inches for allowance, and the other half inches for sewing allowance, and 1 inches for the pleats on the sleeve. That's, I'm going to pleat half of an inch. Don't forget that. Half inch for the pleat, and 1 inches, half inch for the sewing allowance, and 1 inches for the pleat. I believe you guys understand that. So from here, that's from 10 inches to this side. That was where my arm circumference is going to be. So my arm circumference is 13 inches. 13 inches divided by 2. So, which will give me 6.5. I'm going to add an extra 1 inch to that for the inseam allowance. That's 6.5 plus 1 inch, 7.5. You can see that. So I'm going to connect that together to this side. So I'm simply going to cut it out. I believe you can see what we have. And I'm going to cut this side also. So you can see what I have now. So this is what our sleeve look like. You can see this. So the next thing I'm going to do now is very simple. I'm going to that my wrist, which is 5 inches, right? My exact wrist measurement, which is 5 inches. I'm going to divide that by 2, which will give me 2.5, right? So I'm going to, that will be my center point for my slit. You can see that. That's where our placket is going to be. So I'm going to open this. So I'll be taking 2 fabric, 2 of the slit. And the depth is going to be 4 inches, right? So I'm going to mark 4 inches at that place. You can see what I have. So I'll be taking 2 of this. You can see in my hand, I'm taking 2 of this. This is the right side of the fabric, as you can see, while this is the wrong side where I chopped. So I'll take 2 of this and I'm going to cut it so that my 4 inches depth. You can see what we have. That's where the opening is going to be. Very, very simple, right? So the next thing I'm going to cut now is going to be the cufflink itself. So right here on the cufflinks, you can see. So I cut out our wrist circumference, which is 10 inches, right? I added an extra 1.5 to that so that I'll be able to like stitch and cut it. So I cut out 11.5 for the wideness of the cufflinks, and the height is 10.5 inches, as you can see. The reason for that is the wideness of our arm inch for the extension of the cufflinks is 3 inches, right? So I'll be folding something at the edge and I'll be folding in the front also. So I will still have to trim it out. That's why I have this. So the next thing I'm going to cut now is going to be the collar stay that I will be using for the cufflinks itself. So here on my hand, this is the collar stay I will be using. You can see it's a collar stay, a hard collar stay. So in order to cut that out, let me get my tape. So make sure the side is straight. I'm just going to trim it out. You can see what I have. So I'll be cutting out our exact length, which is 10 inches, right? Don't forget for our wrist circumference, 10 inches. Just let me mark it so I'll be able to. 10 inches, I'm going to mark it. So after cutting out the 10 inches, I'm going to fold it together. You can see what I have. Make sure it is straight. Depending on the design you want to use on your cufflinks, this is just a very simple design, as you can see. So I'm just going to make sure this is actually 3 inches. You can see here. So I'll just cut out this edge so that it will be straight. You can see that. So here I will have my 3 inches. You can see that. Make sure that is exactly 3 inches that you're cutting out. So I'm going to trim this place out straight. And make sure your hand is very straight. If you can't do it like this, you can just simply use a like a pen to just chalk it. So depending on the design you want to do, this is just a cuff at the edge. Just a simple cuff at the edge. Let me just cuff this very well. You can see what I have, just a simple cuff at the edge. So now I have my cufflinks looking like this. So if I put it on my wrist, you can see what I have. This is what the cuff is going to look like. You can see that. So now I'm going to get the right side of my fabric. So I just chalked the wrong side. So on the wrong side, as you can see, I'm going to place place the stay right here. I'm going to leave a little bit of space at that edge for the folding. You can see that. So after putting it there, I will gum it and I can simply stitch it all around. So pay attention to this. So after ironing it, this is what we're going to have. So what are we doing now first is I'm going to stitch that edge down. I'm going to stitch that edge, so I will simply turn it backward and stitch it all around. You can see what I'm doing. I'll be able to stitch it all around and cut it out, so I can do a turn up. You can see that. If you enjoyed the video so far, give it a thumbs up. So here I just stitch it straight down. You can see that I just stitch it straight down. So the next thing now is to stitch the round of this of the collar stay, as you can see in my hand. So I'm just going to trim it out. You can see that, and that edge also. Make sure you are not cutting this the stitch around that area. You're cutting at the back of the stitch. You can see that. You can see that. Just trim it down. Very simple. You can see what we have. So this is what the sleeve is going to do. So this is the side we're going to join to the fabric. So I'm just going to trim it. Maybe a quarter of an inch. That's what will be the turn up for the cufflinks itself. Just a quarter of an inch is enough. You can see what we have. So I'm going to simply turn this up. So just push it inside. You can see what the edge is looking like. Let me focus this very well. You can see what the edges are looking like. You can see that. So simply give it a good ironing and make sure it is balanced. Take your time to iron it and push all the excess fabric on the top inside. Then we can simply go ahead and join it to our sleeve. Then we're going to cut out our placket, which is the cuff placket, and I'm going to show you guys this process also. So after ironing is this what we're going to have. You can see that. Very simple. So the place with the collar will be the one at the front of the sleeve, will be the one on the right side of the fabric. So let's cut the placket itself so we can go to the sewing machine. So as you can see, I already folded my placket. It's very simple. It will be the one that will be on the sleeve itself. You can see that. The reason why this one is big is basically because the style I'm making is an Igbo style. So they like something big, and at the end of the sleeve I'm going to be folding that place. So I cut a length of, this is 1/4, you can see that, and a length of 8 inches. If I'm doing a normal placket, it's going to be a maximum of 1 inches, right? But this is 1/4, so it has to be bold. And the length is 8 inches. Maximum, I don't use more than 7 inches for my length. So this is the smaller part. You can see that. It's just going to cover the 4 inches, which will be a total of 5.5 inches. So I believe you guys understand this. So let's go to the sewing machine and do the sewing step by step. So right here, as you can see, so this is the sleeve in which we cut. You can see what we have here is exactly the same thing. So right now, the first thing I'll be doing now, this smaller part right here that I'm holding, that's where I'm going to attach this smaller placket. So you need to pay good attention. And this bigger one is going to be at the bigger side of the placket. That's the easiest way I'm going to explain that for you. So from the wrong side of the fabric, that's where I'm going to start my stitch. This is the right side, while this is the wrong side. So I'm going to place this placket here. At the smaller part, I will open it just like this. You can see that. So I'll simply start my stitch from here. You can see that. So you can see what we have here. So I'm going to make a notch at this edge, just a tiny notch. You can see that. So I can simply turn it to the front, which is the right side of the fabric. So when I turn it to the right side of the fabric, you can see how smooth that side is. Make sure you balance it well. You can see that. I'm going to run my stitch around, but I think I'm having some ruffle around that edge. You can see that side. So that's basically because my notch is not enough, right? Look at that place very well. My notch is not enough, so I'm going to turn it back and make another notch and make a deeper notch. I'm just going to notch it deeper. You can see that. You can see that. So you can see that it's straight now. So I'm just going to make a stitch at that edge. Balance it very well. You can see that. I'm just going to trim out that edge. So this is what the inside is going to look like. You can see what we have. You can see how smooth that is. So after doing that, the next thing we're going to do is on the second one also. From this wrong side also, so you're going to place your second placket, open it up. You can see that. And I'm going to place it at the other side. You can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to stitch it to that particular place in which I stitched this one. You can see that. After stitching that part now, we'll be able to like turn it to the right side and we can do our closing. You can see what I'm doing right there. But first, don't forget to make a notch. If you don't make a notch, that place will be ruffled. You can see that. So you have to turn it to the back. The notch is what makes it balanced in the front. So make a notch. I'm just going to make a notch like that. You can see. And I can simply turn it to the front. So when I turn it to the front, I can have my placket looking like this. You can see that. You can see what I'm having. You can see what we have. It's going to be as straight as that. So I'm going to stitch that side first. So just put up the placket. You can see, just like this. So where I'm starting this stitch from is where I'm going to stop the stitch during when I'm doing the full sewing. So pay attention to what I'm doing here. You can see this. So after stitching that side, which is the first side, I'm just going to place it like this. You can see. Make sure that side is balanced very well. You can see that. Stitch it straight. You can see that. So at this down edge, I'm just going to fold it. Just a simple shaped design at that edge. You can see that. You can see that. You can see that. So I'm going to stitch it to the front. So make sure you overlap that area. You don't need to drag it too much, just overlap that place. You can see that. Make sure it is smooth. So I'm going to stop my stitch at that side and just make a notch like this. You can see I'll be making 2 of that, just 2. And if you want to do some design at this area, you can simply run some simple design at that edge. You can see what we have. So let me take you guys to the ironing table so you guys can see the process. So I'll be taking out the pleat now. You can see what we have. It's very, very simple. So this is the full process. So this is what we're going to have. You can see what we have right here. You can see how smooth that is. Let me zoom backward a little bit. So on this bigger aspect, on this bigger side, what you're going to do now is going to take half of an inch. We're supposed to take 1 inch, right? So we're going to fold half of an inch at each of the sides. So I'm going to be taking 2 pleats, just like that. So I'll be taking 2 pleats. You can see that. Just make sure it's straight. So I'm going to iron it down. You can see what we have. So our pleat is already right there. You can see that. So even if I still measure my sleeve, if I measure the wideness, I can still have above 10 inches. It's like 11 inches. So I'll still be able to sew like half of an inch at the side. So the next thing I'm going to do now is just to stitch that edge. Then I'm going to open up and stitch that edge. Then we can join our extension. So at this place right here, as you can see in my hand, I'm going to stitch down the dart to the fabric. just like this. You can see that. So after stitching down that part, as you can see, I'm going to open up that edge. You can see that edge right here, which is the placket area. That is part of the measurement. So you have to open it up in order to get an accurate measurement for your wrist circumference. So I'm just going to open that place up and make a stitch. You can see that. So after stitching that edge now, I can simply join my sleeve together. So after folding this into two, just like this, now I can take my wrist circumference, which is 10 inches, right? So I'm going to take my wrist circumference from here, 5 inches, don't forget, 5 inches. You can see that. So I'm going to stitch down 5 inches. I'm just going to stitch that down. I'm just going to stop somewhere around here before, during the joining of the borders, I'll be able to take my arm circumference during the joining of the borders. So as you can see in my hand, so this is what our wrist is going to look like. You can see, so our wrist is right there, 5 inches. So let me show you guys what we have so far. So this is for the left hand, I believe. So let me put this in my hand so you guys can see. This is for the left hand. Yeah. Okay. So you can see what we have. You can see what we are having so far. You can see how smooth that is, and the pleat is very smooth and standing. So now I will put in the cuff, which is the extension. So in order to put out the cuff, first I'm going to open this place up, the second stitch. So I'm going to open it up, the placket area that I stitched before. I'll open it up, and the first thing I'll be doing is I'm going to weave the sealed part. This area, I'm going to weave each of those sides before joining the cuff. So after weaving that side, you can see what we have. So I'm just going to iron it, then I can do my cuff. So now I'm going to place my cuff right here. So if you measure, if you like take it round, it's going to stop at that particular area. So from here, if you measure it round, just like this, it's going to stop at this side. So just make sure that side is accurate. Then we can join it too. In case your own is not accurate, you can just join it, like rejoin the sleeve side, the wrist circumference. Let me focus this very well. So from here, as you can see, I'm going to stitch this side. You know, the sleeve itself is turned into the wrong side, right? So after stitching it, we can simply move it to the right side. So we are stitching from the wrong side now. So just place this right here. You can see that. Just place this like this. You can see what I'm doing. Let me focus the camera back, okay? So make sure that place is balanced, and I'm going to stitch it round. So here, so as you can see, so from there, I'm just going to start my stitch. You can see that. I'm just going to open that place up. You can see that. You can see that. Just make sure that side align. You can see that. So after stitching that place, I'm just going to trim out all this excess thread so that it won't be coming out. You can see. Then we can simply turn in our sleeve. Turn it inside. You can see what I just did. Our sleeve is almost ready. You can see that. Let me turn this to the right side of the sleeve. You can see what our sleeve is going to look like. So all you just have to do now is just to lock that edge. You can see what we are having so far. So I'm just going to lock that front side. So push that side in, make sure there's no excess thread at that place. Just going to close that area. You can see. You can see that. Just make sure that place is balanced. Make sure that edges are balanced. You can see that. Then I can simply cut it out. And our sleeve is ready. So all you have to do now is just to put in your buttonholes, and this is the result you're going to have. You can see how smooth that is. So I believe I've solved your problem now, so we don't have issue with the cufflink sleeve again. If you like the video, so you can simply make a stitch around your wrist, just round that side, and you don't have to design it. So that is it on how to cut and sew a cufflink sleeve step by step. If you like the video, give it a thumb up and make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on my next video. Peace, and do have a lovely day.